double this weekend and still very much in this race, but all eyes on Owings Mills. Luke's been on the backfields. They're headed for more fake football yet again this weekend, and the backup quarterback and backups everywhere. And a very, very tough fantasy proposition, I think, even though Terrence West told everyone they should pick him. This guy specializes in fantasy work, but also covers the National Football League at Bleacher Report and an NFL analyst there as well. He is a senior staff writer for Fantasy Sharks as well, hence his Twitter nickname, IDP Sharks. We welcome back one of our defending champions out there in the state that, they hate Ohio State, out in Columbus with his little Browns hat on. We welcome Gary Davenport back. You know, when you're a Browns fan, playing fantasy is like what you got, right? I mean, that is your best shot to be a winner this year, right?
Yeah, I got to have a little bit of hope on Sunday afternoons after all.
Well, right, of course, and I know you have all of that. Look, we have our own problems here. I can't be making fun of the Browns when Ryan Mallett's our quarterback. We're having a hard time getting a healthy offensive line out onto the field, and I guess for anybody in the fantasy space, it's return on investments about the known versus the unknown. Boy, the Ravens are a tough play for fantasy, I guess, unless you want their defense, right?
Absolutely. I mean, especially the pass catchers, Jeremy Maclin, Mike Wallace, guys like that. It's hard to really peg where you should be taking those guys in drafts right now. If I had to pick one guy on the Baltimore offense who has the most value right now, it would probably be Danny Woodhead. And in him, we're talking about a back who's well the wrong side of 30, coming off an ACL tear.
And who's not going to be on the field a lot. I mean, he's going to be used, but he's not going to be he's not a four-down back. That's for sure.
Right. His draft price has been steadily climbing, and if anything, the Flacco injury only accelerated that, because I think people believe that if we do see Ryan Mallett start the season under center for the Ravens, that there's going to be a lot of dumping the ball off out of the backfield to Danny Woodhead. So people that are in leagues that award a point for catches, Woodhead's price has climbed almost to the point where it's a little bit too rich for my blood. I won't say to stay completely away from the Ravens, because I never tell people to just don't target anyone. There's a position of value for every player, but guys like Maclin and Wallace, I will confess, they make me nervous right now, because the Ravens keep saying that Joe Flacco's back is no big deal, and I don't believe them.
He is Gary Davenport, IDP Sharks, and I'll believe Flacco on the field when I see it, and if he can come out on September 10th and act like, he's had a full training camp, I'll be shocked by that. I think everybody would be shocked by that. But I think there's indecision in a lot of these camps. I mean, look, we're seeing Miami this week, and I know as much as you'd look at them and say, well, I would take Devontae Parker, I would take some of these guys, not just fantasy, but just in general. I've looked at their roster, and I think, well, they're a pretty good team. And then I think they're mixing Jay Cutler in, who did not spend any of the offseason even thinking about playing football. There are question marks everywhere in the AFC, I think. I mean, even in Oakland, where you got a quarterback coming back from an incredible injury that is very, very difficult to bounce back from.
Oh, absolutely. Miami, you got the new quarterback mixing in. You got a guy, Jay Ajayi, who's coming off the board second round in most drafts, who got half of his production last year in like 3 games. So he was very up and down. I wonder how Cutler's going to affect Jarvis Landry, who's another guy who's coming off the board second, third round, and especially in leagues that award a point for catches. Cutler's never been a guy that threw a lot to the slot receiver. So I wonder if it's going to help Devontae Parker a little bit, maybe hurt Jarvis Landry. And like you said, there's question marks everywhere. I mean, you got the whole situation hanging. Ezekiel Elliott was a top 5 draft pick until last week. Now no one knows where to take him.
Well, and that affects the balance of power all the way around. We've spent the last 8 months talking about the Cowboys, maybe the Falcons, but the sexier picks here in August, and probably the leap of faith would be, and I have not watched Hard Knocks yet. I've been a little busy this week, with protest marches and my mom and doing radio, but at some point I'm going to sit down with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I know everyone's on their bandwagon, and I know in Tennessee everyone's on the Mariota train as well. That's going to affect fantasy as well. The speculation on those two franchises.
Oh, absolutely. And Tampa's been a trendy pick for most of the offseason, and a lot of the fantasy options for the Buccaneers have gotten a nice little boost as a result. I will say I watched their preseason opener against the Cincinnati Bengals, and the first-string offense was only on the field for a couple series. But they looked really good. I mean, they drove right down the field, stalled out and had to kick a field goal, but still, it was good to see. Mike Evans was still being targeted a ton. I think Deshaun Jackson was only targeted once. I wouldn't read too much into it. I think the big thing for them is just going to be getting through this first few weeks with no Doug Martin and kind of keeping the ship above water. Tennessee, there's a lot of talent on that team, and it's a division that appears winnable. Mariota's a guy I'm targeting as my quarterback in a lot of drafts because he's coming off the board usually, 7th, 8th, 9th round at quarterback, somewhere in that vicinity. For a good portion of last year, I think it was week 4 to week 12, he was the top scoring quarterback in fantasy football, put up more points than Aaron Rodgers did over that stretch. And you look at the new weapons that he has at his disposal, an underrated offensive line, arguably the best 1-2 punch at running back in the NFL. I've always been a guy who likes to wait at the quarterback position. I like to load up on running backs and wide receivers early because I can come back and get a Mariota later or a Phillip Rivers later or a Matthew Stafford later. So those are the signal callers that seem to be finding their way onto the majority of my teams.
Would you want a Joe Flacco later? I mean, where is he in all of this from a fantasy perspective? I mean, I can't imagine anything riskier right now than him because he's not under center right now. We're getting to the end of August, not the middle of August.
Flacco's always been a guy that's a better NFL quarterback than a fantasy option. He was never a guy that put up huge numbers. His value is going to lie mostly in super flex leagues where you can flex a quarterback or in 2 QB leagues. And in those leagues, people are going to draft him at some point because every quarterback in a 12-team super flex or a 12-team 2 QB league is going to be drafted. I mean, Deshaun Watson is going to be drafted. Someone's going to try to figure out who the starter in Cleveland is going to be. I mean, you want to talk uncertainty at the quarterback position in fantasy football. That would be coming out of Indianapolis where no one knows whether or not Andrew Luck was coming off the board as a top 5 quarterback. Now, maybe he'll be ready for week 1. They don't know. Hasn't even started throwing. Shoulder's a problem. That's a lot of ifs and question marks to put in a high-round draft pick.
Who do you think isn't a question mark right now? I guess Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, and then maybe Aaron Rodgers, and then from there, I think all of this is a little bit of a box of chocolates, even down to Roethlisberger and his health getting older and what's going to happen inside of the framework of that offense and where they're going to go. And, obviously I think Denver, Houston, a lot of these teams that have had defenses the last couple of years and even won a championship, you go back and say, well, where would they be offensively this year? And I don't even think, the Cowboys, when you're talking about Dak Prescott, who would be, a hotter commodity if they had more of a real running game. There's questions everywhere. We're feeling sorry for ourselves here in Baltimore, but it does do my heart well to talk to everyone else that's in some state of confusion out there.
Yeah, there's maybe 4 quarterbacks that I would say are fairly sure bets: Breeze, Rodgers, Brady, and Ryan. And then after that, like you said, the question marks start piling up pretty quickly, whether it's health or the weapons around them or scheme but that's all the more reason to wait unless you are willing to spend that early pick to get one of those top 4 guys. And Aaron Rodgers probably isn't making it out of the second round, which is far too early for a quarterback, in my opinion. You can wait, and you can get a guy like I said, a Phillip Rivers or a Matthew Stafford. It's not the sexiest pick for your fantasy team, but those guys are consistent producers. They're not going to finish as the number 1 quarterback, but they're not going to finish as the number 15 or number 18 quarterback either. They're going to finish right in that 7 to 10 range, give you some consistent points, and you'll make up the difference because your running backs and your wide receivers will be all the more strong.
Gary Davenport does all things fantasy and all things NFL at Bleacher Report. He's one of the analysts there, but a serial fantasy player. That means that you have fantasy for breakfast as well. Senior staff writer for Fantasy Sharks as well as IDP Sharks out on Twitter as well. On the fantasy side of things, I guess from the kicking perspective, maybe the Ravens would kick as many field goals as anyone, right? Tucker comes off the board first, probably, right?
Yeah, he's my number 1 kicker. He's not going to wind up on any of my teams, if only because he'll come off the board before the last round of the draft, and I never draft a kicker before the last round. He's always the last guy I take. But yeah, as kickers go, he's the best kicker in football. He's as automatic as you can reasonably expect someone to be. And he's a guy that, you can roll out there every week. I mean, if he misses, everyone sits slack-jawed staring at the TV like, did Justin Tucker just miss?
Yeah, he just missed one in preseason, and was like, yeah, I know it was long and all, but he missed it, and then, then he comes back and hits it. So, I mean, it is preseason, but, it's one thing we've taken for granted around here, especially in the aftermath of Billy Cundiff, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference in ability between Billy Cundiff and Justin Tucker, ever so slight.
Well, I mean, we won and we lost, and I have nothing against Cundiff, who's a quality human being and a guy who has been a stand-up guy, but it really is the difference for so many franchises. At least we can say we have the best kicker around here, and that does my heart well. Defenses, and taking defenses in the fantasy side, Gary, some thoughts about who's going to be shut down. I guess I look at the front of your site and see J.J. Watt there smiling at me. I guess that would be a centerpiece, and even without him last year, they were still excellent, but you begin and end all talk with the Texans, right?
Hey, Houston's an excellent fantasy defense. Denver is annually really good. The Arizona Cardinals can be a sneaky value. I think they've scored top 3 in fantasy points the last couple of years. They're very aggressive on defense. They get a lot of sacks and big plays. They get after it. So, and a lot of times that's if you have a team that's good at not giving up yardage and good at not giving up points, that's great. But in most fantasy football leagues, what really scores you points is takeaways and sacks and big plays and stuff like that. So having a defense that gives up some yardage isn't necessary. You want a defense that's aggressive, that's going to get after it. I've always been a proponent of streaming defenses. I will look at the schedule for the first week or two of the regular season, try to find a defense that opens the year with some very nice matchups. This year, the Pittsburgh Steelers open against Cleveland. I think Carolina opens against San Francisco and then plays Chicago. Get one of those defenses, and once those favorable matchups dry up a week or two in, you just throw that defense on the waiver wire, and you look for whoever's playing Cleveland or whoever's playing the New York Jets. And there are going to be matchup defenses available on your waiver wire, and you can get top fantasy production out of that defense you cobble together without paying retail like you will for a Denver or a Houston or an Arizona.
How long is Tom Brady and Drew Brees a good value at this point? I mean, shouldn't we as human beings who have seen Father Time sort of begin to think, well, this has got to be the beginning of especially for Brees, right, who has not had help around him as much. And I know a lot of people are kind of high on the Saints this year. I don't see it, but I'm waiting for the season to start.
Yeah, there's been plenty of talk out of New Orleans how there's going to be more balance offensively, and they're going to run that. And yes, they did add Adrian Peterson and Alvin Kamara, so it would seem they have the talent to be a little more balanced. I don't know. I don't think they have a defense that can keep them in games, so I think we're going to see the same thing in New Orleans that we've seen in New Orleans the past several years. If Saints are going to win the game, they're going to have to win a shootout, which it's not great for Saints fans. It's not really great for Brees, but for fantasy owners, it could mean yet another 5,000-yard season. So I don't know that the end is coming this year for Brady or Brees. We're reaching a point where sooner or later it's going to happen, and you just have to take that into consideration when you spend that draft pick. It's just like taking, say, Frank Gore, who's 33, 34 years old now at running back, or an aging wide receiver. That edge of the cliff is out there somewhere. And sometimes it's not a gradual decline. Sometimes guys go over the edge and you never hear from them again.
You know what, man? I think if taking Odell Beckham, okay, we can do that. But I think he should get extra points when he makes a catch like the one he made the other day on the internet.
You know what? If there was a way to score those online, I would probably add a bonus for super acrobatic catches to my league.
Best catch of the week, right? I mean, or whatever, right? I mean, you get an extra 5 points for that or something, right?
Yeah, and I've been known to devise scoring systems that are occasionally a little different, so I'll have to look into that.
It's like my wiffle ball league at Rob DeBillius' yard back in the 70s. We had house rules, sort of make them up as you go along, and they make the game a little more interesting. Hey, it's always more interesting talking fantasy with you. I don't do a lot of fantasy football around here. I see you as one of the gurus out there, even though you have a Browns hat on. That leads me to believe that I know that you're still serious about fantasy because, I mean, it's hard to be serious about the Browns, right? I mean, seriously, like, as a fan, Is there anything about this that makes you feel like this is going to go in the right direction this year? Like, right direction, like 6 or 7 wins, and maybe, blackening the eye of the Ravens or the Steelers or the Browns once or twice during the year?
Oh, 7 wins would be phenomenal. I'll settle for 5 or 6 if you just give me some progress. And that's what Cleveland fans and the Cleveland front office and ownership needs at this point. If you've picked a direction and you believe that Hugh Jackson is the guy that can lead you in that direction, exercise a little bit of patience. That's what keeps the Browns are stuck in a hamster wheel of terrible, because every 2 or 3 years they're blowing up the franchise. They're firing the head coach, firing the general manager. You get a new regime comes in, looks around at the players and says, no, this won't work. These aren't my guys. So you're turning the roster over. There's no continuity. You need a little bit of continuity if you're going to have success. So be patient, Cleveland. So far, so good. It looks like it's been a decent offseason. Let's get out there and try and win a few football games.
I miss Mike Pettin, and I'm going to be the first one to say it. So there you have it, all right? So until Mike Pettin comes back, I'm on a Mike Pettin strike from all things Browns, even though I like you. See you later, Gary. Always good having you on, bro.
Oh, pleasure's mine.
You got it. Gary Davenport, IDP Sharks, out on Twitter, NFL analyst at Bleacher Report, and the senior staff writer for Fantasy Sharks. He is your fantasy football guru around here. We like having him on as well. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day as we continue fake football around here. We have real radio for you, as well as a very real morning newspaper that delivers digitally to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. If you are headed to London next month for the Wembley trip, we'd love to have you with us on Saturday. We're taking a little piece of the Saturday afternoon. We're having a 2:52 march in the middle of the day to the Purple Skyway. We're going to do a Purple Sky takeover of the O2 Arena from the Docklands area on the East Dock of London. We'd love to see you. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'll be sharing more information. It's Saturday before the game in London. If you're going, friends are going, join us. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.